and welcome to Fact Schmacks. It's the podcast good enough to get you a C.
Minus.
My name's...
I forgot what I had to say there for a sec. Just roll with it. It's Fact Schmacks, man. That's what we do.
You have one really small job. My name's Matt.
That I've done a bunch.
My name's Matt, and I've got a story to tell you.
My name's Kev. I have a story to interrupt.
And an intro to forget. Kevin, I've stolen this shamelessly from Hank Green on the YouTube there. But I wanted
who that is.
to tell you something. Do you know that, for all of human history, all of the dead people have been on Earth, together. Everyone has at least decayed completely on Earth, except for about 30 minutes on June 29th, 1971. This is kind of morbid, but on June 29th, 1971, the Soyuz 11 capsule or rocket or whatever the Soyuz things are, left the International Space Station, or I guess it wouldn't have been the International Space Station at that point.
Was it Mir?
It would have been Mir, I think. I'd have to look that up, but I didn't look that far into this.
You clearly didn't.
Nope. But there was 3 men on board: Gregory Dubrovsky, Vladislav Volkov, and Viktor Patsayev. Unfortunately, as they were preparing to enter the atmosphere, their capsule depressurized and it killed all 3 of them. And they were dead up there for about half an hour before the capsule came down on its own. They're the only people to have ever died in space. The only time in history when all the dead people weren't on Earth together, which is a weird way of thinking about it.
What a very morbid fact.
What a very, very morbid fact for you. To start off this spooky
part of our Halloween kind of spookiness
podcast. I hope that you've got some spooky facts for me. We'll see if we'll see if without prompting you came up with anything.
Not only do I have some spooky themed fact schmacks for you.
Yes.
I got options for you, bud. I have
options
2 that you can choose from. That's how prepared we are for season 2.
Holy crap.
I told you we were up in our game. I got 2 things I'm going to offer you. A little nod to our former this or that.
Okay.
Are we going to be talking about phobias or mythical monsters?
Mythical monsters. I'm tired of your phobias bullshit.
Right. Well, you know what? It's a good go-to for this time of year. All right. See, my original plan was to whatever you pick, then just do the opposite. But you know what? let's do mythical monsters. I'm gonna be gracious today. Fact or schmacked, Matt?
Yeah.
Fistaful, an Israeli mythological creature, part dog, part pig, that is down for mayhem, pranks, and is blamed for the loss of pets. Its weakness is its own reflection.
Can you say that again?
It's Pistipole. Fistaful. I don't know.
Certainly a mouthful.
What do you want
anyways?
it to be? It's certainly a mouthful. Fact or schmacked? Here's a little nod to our friends at Milk, Max and Lano.
Yes.
Babadook,
an
Australian boogeyman who acts as a metaphor for grief. He's described as very tall, pale-faced man with long fingers who wears a top hat. He can be scared into a basement, though, when one overcomes loss.
Oh.
So originally I was going to make a joke about maybe your Babadook, but it says he's very tall. I've never seen you wear a top hat. So,
well, if I did wear a top hat, maybe people would think I was kind of tall.
Yeah, maybe they would think you're Babadook. Fact or schmacked, Matt? Sikosan, Tsikon, SAN, a Japanese specter with penchants for the elderly. It is said that when the elderly don't pass well at death, it's because they were visited from this monster between this life and the next who comes to torment them at the end of their life. So, what's it going to be?
Are you still doing this like bullshit? You're making up the rules on the fly.
100%.
Like two of them could be wrong.
I made up the rules for season 2, and I'm sticking to them.
Okay. Is it possible that none of them are made up?
There's always going to be there's always going to be a fact or a schmack.
Okay,
like
so there's one is always going to be wrong.
Yeah,
at least one.
That's season 3 where we throw in the wrench where it could all be bullshit,
or they could all be true.
It's a numbers thing. Season 2, we have 2 options.
Well, the Babadook I've heard of.
Have you really?
Yeah. Well, there's a famous meme on the internet where someone it's a throwback to when I showed up to a party dressed as the Babadook, and it turned out it was more of a drink wine Halloween party. It's a picture of somebody dressed in a top hat. Yeah.
I tried telling my apprentice that everybody dresses up for work or dresses up for Halloween at the construction site I'm on. He didn't buy it. I just thought it'd be hilarious if he showed up dressed like a puppy or something.
In a clown outfit. Full-blown clown gear.
Turns out we're all just village people.
So that leaves me with an interesting conundrum, because the only one that I'm pretty sure is true is the one that you can actually say. The other two you don't even know how to pronounce.
So what, you think I made up something I can't even pronounce?
Well, this is a real dilly of a pickle for me. You see where my
yeah, I see where the conundrum lies.
Oh.
But you know what? You were winning too much before. It was too easy before. I was too easy on you.
These are mythological creatures.
Or yeah, like mythological monsters, like the Boogeyman or Nosferatu or whatever. TikTok, Matt. TikTok.
Fucking hell.
Yeah.
I'm going to say it's the third one. And the first one. I'm going to say they're both made up.
Yeah, he got me.
Ah!
I thought maybe if I played dumb on them, you'd be like, oh, yeah, like you can't even pronounce them. You must have looked them up.
I should never have let you into how I analyze your answer, your questions.
All right, you win this one. But I bet you got a story for me.
I do. With the inevitability
I bet people die.
Pardon?
I bet people die. It's the Halloween theme.
Yeah, people do die in
There's
this one.
There's going to be death. Yeah. No.
Tens. In the tens.
In the tens.
In the
okay.
tens. With the inevitability of a tongue returning to probe a painful tooth, we come back and back and back again to our fears, sitting to talk them over with the eagerness of a hungry man before a full and steaming plate. That's a quote from Clive Barker, one of my personal favorite authors.
I knew you didn't make that up.
Yes.
I was like, oh, he's getting real fancy on season 2. Look at him go.
Yeah. But I just wanted to start. I might do that from time to time. Start stories off with a little quote or something.
You know what I've noticed is a recurring theme on our podcast?
What's that?
Sing, we'll do shit,
and then not doing it. That's why I love when you just spring ideas on me while we're recording.
Yeah.
At least this is something for me that I can follow through on.
Yeah. Good luck. Many have tried.
On November 12th, 1966, in the West Virginia town of Clendenin, 5 grave diggers claim to have seen something
like the monster truck?
Spooky. No, not 5 monster trucks. 5 people who were digging a grave.
Well, you said Tennessee, right?
No, West Virginia.
That's what I meant.
Holy shit, man.
That's what I meant. Oh, boy. Slow down, bud.
Slow down.
Let's put this vape pen back in the desk.
They claimed to have seen a man-like shadowy figure fly over their heads. This, as you can imagine, caused a bit
Superman?
of a stir in the local community. What's that?
Superman?
Sort of. Right,
Okay.
maybe right property, but wrong hero. A few days later, on November 15th, a pair of young couples, Raja and Linda Scarberry and Steve and Mary Millette, had an experience. They claimed to have spotted a large gray creature whose eyes glowed red. When the headlights shone on them, they glowed red. I'm reading my notes and observing the terrible punctuation that I used while I was making them. They described whatever they had saw as a large flying man with 10-foot wings, supposedly following their car as they fled from the creature at speeds of up to 100 miles per hour.
That's horrifying.
Horrifying. In the following days, many more people saw something. The sheriff was said to have, believed this. So this pair of couples, they went to the sheriff and they reported what they had seen. And he said that, he believed them. He thought that they had definitely seen or saw something. They were spooked. He didn't think they were making it up. He didn't think it was anything too weird, though. He actually thought it was an unusually large heron that he had been seen in the area, and he had actually given it a nickname, Shite Poke. A University of West Virginia biologist thought that maybe it was a sandhill crane. In any event, though, these sightings were causing a stir in the community, and it was probably a local reporter named Mary Hyre, Hyre, who coined the name the Mothman. No doubt drawing from
Mothman.
Yes. No doubt drawing from the Batman television show, which in 1966 was in its original run.
Those were the best ones.
Some days you just can't get rid of a bomb.
Oh my God. I used to love watching that when I was a kid.
Yeah. Oh, I think that show is still hilarious
at that point.
So now that you know that we're talking about the Mothman, what's your, do you have any impression of the Mothman? Any?
You know what? I always thought it was just like a movie. I didn't realize that this was a true tale.
It's based on a true story.
No kidding.
Yes. In that there are definitely real events that are included in the book and movie. Yes.
There is a movie, right?
There is a movie, The Mothman Prophecies. Did you see it?
No.
I didn't personally think it was a very good movie when I saw it. I know other people think it's a much better movie than I did.
I'm thinking of like The Fly with Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah, it's not really like that. So you don't know, literally nothing
there
about like the Mothman or what he's,
I am a blank slate.
Tabula rasa. You just know the name.
Yep.
Sweet.
Paint me a picture.
Absolutely.
Paint me like one of your French girls.
Well, I'm painting a picture of kind of what originally was kind of reported on at the time. And, while all that's going on, there's a man in the area named Woodrow Derenberger, and he's telling stories. Woody. He's telling stories of meeting a strange man who spoke to him.
Okay. Hold up.
Yeah.
Full stop.
Yeah.
I gotta say,
okay.
I don't know many Woodies, but I feel like if you meet a Woody, he's the guy who's going to tell you some tales. I feel like that's just one of those names. Yeah, my pal Woody, he told me. You're like, yeah, I don't know about your old pal Woody.
I have 3 touchstones.
No offense to
I was going to say
Woodies.
2. I've got 3 touchstones for Woody. I've got Woody the the old puppet from or toy from Toy Story. There's a Woody.
Yeah.
I've got Woody Harrelson. Also Woody.
Yeah, I mean,
from
but I
Cheers.
feel like Woody Harrelson probably has some stories.
Oh, sure, for sure.
He's done some shit
for sure. And I had a dog named Woody once.
Okay.
Yep. So just
he had a tail.
Goddamn. So yes, this Woodrow Derenberger guy here, he meets a strange man on the road who supposedly kind of stopped him on the road by veering into the middle of the road. And, he originally thought it was maybe he was like a police officer or something, but he noticed something was definitely off with this man when he spoke to him telepathically. And he didn't say to him, I guess. He thought to him that his name was Indrid Cold, which is kind of a dumb name.
That's a very dumb name.
It's a very, very dumb name. I guess it does fit the mold of being like a Ford Prefect sort of name. Like, do you know what Ford Prefect, who that was from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy?
He's like the not the narrator, but the guide or whatever.
Yeah, he's the alien who was living on Earth.
Yeah.
And he picked the name Ford Prefect because he thought that cars were the dominant life forms on Earth, so he picked a name that would fit in.
I need to revisit that. Like, I gotta go. I gotta read that book.
Yeah, 5 books, a trilogy in 5 parts.
Okay,
Mhm.
maybe I don't.
It's they're really good up until I think the last one wasn't finished, if I'm recalling correctly. But they're
I have a hard time with fiction anymore, man. There's so many good real stories out there.
So many good real stories. Anyways, yes, Indrid Cold here. He apparently after this he went on to visit Derenberger many, many times, and apparently it turned out Indrid Cold was from the planet Lanulos, and he once even took Derenberger there once.
So it sounds like schmacks I would make up.
Yeah.
Like these names, I'm like, yeah. Prefect.
So I'll let you draw your own conclusions as to the credibility of that guy.
Sure.
But moving on, sightings eventually calmed down. Most people forgot about all of this Mothman nonsense. 13 months later, I think actually to the day, in 1967, the Silver Bridge, which connected Ohio and West Virginia, collapsed. I think there was 40 some odd people killed in that bridge collapse. It was a really, really bad incident. Small town like Point Pleasant, where the bridge was connected to in West Virginia, just about everybody there would have been hurt by that in one way or another. It's a real human tragedy.
Yeah, like 6 degrees of separation,
right? But it'd be like 2 degrees of separation.
Town.
Yeah,
coming from a smaller town, everybody would know somebody.
Yeah, you'd be touched with it
to some degree,
one way or another. Turns out, at the time, there were 2 writers who were in the area, and they were both working on UFO books. In 1970, 3 years after this bridge collapses, an author named Gray Barker released a book. That's not Clive Barker, the guy who I quoted off the top. Gray Barker, different guy, released a book called The Silver Bridge. It was the first time a connection was drawn between, UFO sightings that he had been in the area supposedly following up on, even though there's no actual real, contemporary reports of that happening in newspapers or whatever. Doesn't mean it doesn't happen. It's just can't really find a source for that. But supposedly they were in the area already working on books. They tie these sightings of this weird moth-like man and the Silver Bridge collapse kind of wraps them together, says they must be related in some way.
Like he's like a harbinger of tragedy.
That's what the myth winds up being. I haven't read this guy's book. I haven't read The Silver Bridge, so I don't know exactly how much how much of that work is done in this book. This book doesn't really catch on that much, but he is the first guy to kind of write about this. He's much more famous for writing a book called They Knew Too Much About Flying Saucers, which kind of put the idea of the Men in Black into the public consciousness. So he's more well known for that, but he's obviously a writer with an agenda, right? He's starting with with an agenda there. That book didn't make a whole lot of noise, but the idea was kind of recycled 5 years later by a guy named John Keel. John Keel had also been contacted by this Darren Berger guy, or is that the name?
Woody.
Woody, yeah. Old Woodrow there. So he brings this Indrid Cole character into it. You know, it turns into this whole, the Mothman is an alien and he's a harbinger of impending doom. He links this bridge collapse, even though, you know, the closest sighting to that bridge had to have been 20 kilometers away. That the Mothman was sighted at. The first place he sighted at was 50 miles from that bridge. So it's kind of, you know, I guess, we'll get into that in a second. But yeah, he in his book, he adds a bunch of like UFO sightings and just kind of wraps this all up into a neat little package to present at pop culture. And that kind of gains traction over time until the movie comes out in the 90s. And then all of a sudden it's, you know, he's a character that has a lot of pop culture cachet out of this. This is the incident, really. A few people saw something that they couldn't quite explain. One guy was obviously off.
Weeks later, a bridge falls.
A year.
Yeah.
Several weeks.
Okay.
About 56 of them, if I'm doing my math correctly. So yeah, when you think about it, like, is there anything here at all? There's a half dozen reports back in the 60s. Only 2 of them are describing even remotely the same thing. The rest of the supposed sightings of the Mothman that are like contemporary, that aren't people like post hoc talking about it, are like, you know, a guy standing on the side of the road looking weird, someone maybe peering into the windows. It just kind of seems like anything that people saw, they're reporting as this
attributing to this.
Yeah. There's only 2 people who reported seeing something flying. And it very well could have been a bird. Even the most reliable account, the pair of couples who supposedly, you know, this is considered to be the most reliable account, who outran this beast going up to 100 miles per hour. I strongly doubt that they were driving down dirt roads at 100 miles per hour. Like, really think about that. Can you imagine going...
Yeah, that's pretty dodgy.
That's pretty dodgy, man. You know...
You don't go fast on dirt roads.
No. Especially not in that day. I had a truck that was... I used to have a truck that was built in 82. This is 20 years after this happened, and the speedometer topped out at 120.
Yeah.
Kilometers per hour.
Yeah, but like gravel, I mean, you know, you get the slightest little wiggle on the wheel, especially back then with like rear wheel drive and stuff.
Yeah, you're gone.
Like I'm just now getting used to. I've never had a car with rear wheel drive until now.
Yeah,
and there's a couple times I hit the gas and I feel the back end go, and I'm like, oh shit. I'm like, I forgot. There's not a lot of weight back there.
Your new whip is like rear wheel.
Rear wheel and then 4-wheel.
Oh, okay.
Of course, because it's a Jeep, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's rear wheel drive.
Oh, no kid. I've never driven anything that's rear wheel.
Actually, today...
I have, I guess. I drove your Jeep.
Today in the rain, yeah, you did. Today in the rain, I actually swerved out a bit. Like, yeah.
Lesson learned, keep the 4-wheel on.
A little too hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think 4-wheel for when it's wet, just because of that.
Yep. Yeah, and then, so, sorry to get back to, you know.
But yeah, no, you're definitely not driving that fast on dirt roads.
Not for a sustained amount of time anyways. So there's obviously parts of it that are embellished. Did they see something? Probably. Was it a Mothman? I doubt it. Like that's a weird conclusion to jump to.
I'm gonna go back to my standard position of just being the optimist for these things, even though like I'm not easily convinced. I'm not even remotely convinced about this, but wouldn't it be like fun to live in a world where these things could happen?
For sure, it's a fun story. The whole idea, though, that this was some sort of harbinger of this bridge collapsing disaster, if it was trying to warn about what was going to happen with the bridge, wouldn't you appear a little bit closer to the bridge? Maybe point at it.
Yeah.
Point at the structural parts that are going to be an issue. That would be more helpful than appearing 50 miles away and flying over some gravediggers. Like, the message is obviously lost in translation there, right?
Yeah, I think so.
And if this injured cold fella who is, talking telepathically to Woody, who is a sewing machine salesman, nothing wrong with that. If he's supposedly involved, why didn't he say, "Hey, man, the bridge is going to collapse"?
Yeah,
well, or think it,
sure.
But none of this story makes sense. Tying the whole bridge collapse thing into it just doesn't make sense. I kind of love the Mothman thing just because of how flimsy the whole thing is.
Yeah, and it's become it's not a huge thing. Like I heard of Mothman, but it was a movie from when I was, when it came out in the 90s. Yeah.
I think that movie did a lot. It did a lot to kind of.
Well, it got the name out into common, pop culture, I guess.
Yes. What am I? The zeitgeist. I'm like, yeah, that's the word I'm looking for.
Thank you.
The zeitgeist.
Yeah, so it definitely did that, but
no, maybe it'll turn out that it's like this bridge collapsed for no reason, right? Well, no, it was an old bridge. It was designed in an era where there weren't like transport trucks driving over it. They designed it in such a way that made it very difficult to tell if it was still structurally sound at all, and it turned out it wasn't.
Have you ever seen when they do harmonic vibrations to things, where you cycle something in such a way that it builds its frequency on it? So, like, imagine like hitting something with a hammer, but being able to hit the peak of that like with another hammer that like causes the whole signal to increase. Anyhow, you can. So, as part of my job, I have to understand like vibration analysis and stuff.
Okay.
And there's a way that things can start to sympathetically harmonize with each other.
Sure, especially if you're
one part vibrates at a certain frequency and then the other one starts to match it and they start to amplify each other.
Sure, like a feedback loop.
Boom. Yeah. So that's kind of what I was getting at. Like, it's harmonic resonance, I believe it's called.
Yeah, which I think is commonly credited with that. What's the bridge that that wobbled?
The wind. Yeah,
it was the wind.
It
wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't vibration.
But they say that it kind of matched something that caused it to amplify. I don't know.
No, I think at the end of the day, it was just like it was kind of anchored in the middle, and once the two sides started swinging offset from each other, it looks like
that's what I mean.
Yeah, it looks like a wave, but it's really just the wind. Yeah, it's like momentum as a wave.
I do remember that story about that bridge collapse. That's what made me think of it.
Yeah.
I always think of that when we're on the bridges near where we live. I always, when I'm on them, I'm just like, oh, God, pretty high up. Not much down there. Can't swim very well.
Yeah, I never go over those bridges.
It freaks me out.
It has much more to do with where they lead to. It's not the bridge that bothers me. It's what's on the other end of it.
Jesus. America.
We grew up in a border town for sorry Americans. Love you. In today times, oftentimes when there's some piece of infrastructure that fails, there'll be some Yahoo on the internet who says they saw the Mothman, and in the time leading up to it. Sure. It's always after the fact. Nobody ever says they've seen a Mothman and then like the next day a disaster happens, or I guess 13 months later if we're going by that calendar. But free idea for like an ARG, an internet-based ARG, is a Mothman sighting with an impending disaster. I think it would be maybe hard to do without getting people in a bit of a panic. You always got to worry about that if you're going to play some sort of internet game. But that would be kind of a fun one, a Mothman-based disaster. But for example, in 2007, the I-35W bridge over the Mississippi in Minneapolis collapsed. I think like 13 people died on that. And then, of course, after the fact, people on the internet are saying they saw a Mothman. Again, let me know when you've seen one before a disaster and you can use that Mothman to predict a disaster.
Yeah, for sure. Oh shit, what was I gonna say?
I don't know, but
God.
I'll just finish up here with my thought.
Yeah,
at the end of the day, there's just not much here. It's really surprising how much cultural cachet the Mothman has, considering how little he has done. He doesn't threaten people. He just kind of flew over some teenagers and some gravediggers, and he was supposedly... Nobody even says he's responsible for the bridge collapsing. They're just saying he showed up as some sort of warning. But I will say good on the town of Point Pleasant, because if you go there, like, fucking everything is about the Mothman, as it should be. Like, they've turned that town into, like, Disneyland for the Mothman, and I fully support that. It's a fun little story, and it should be like that. That's kind of... I do have kind of a larger kind of follow-up to the story of the Mothman, I guess, or the history of the Mothman story, as it were. Because if you think about, the mythologies that you and I grew up with as people who are, getting close to, or who are, in their 40s, the mythos that we grew up with all took time to develop, right? Took time for word of mouth to spread. There's this kind of game of telephone, and you can kind of see like people adding to these stories as each person picks up the baton and carries it a little further. Something like Roswell, we went over that a little bit. It takes like 30 or 40 years for that to even start growing into a myth. And then you've got, this game of telephone where people are like this little whisper game. People are embellishing the story and embellishing the story
of it gets a little. If you ask 10 people, you get 10 different stories. And have some,
this guy tells the story a little bit bigger, and then when the next guy writes a book, that's the small version of the story, and that guy writes the story a little bit bigger, and the next guy comes to write a book, and that's the standard version, and the next one has to be a little bit, has to have something more to offer. That stuff really takes time. Mothman took 3 to 8 years for that to really develop, and then a long time after that. Sorry, you've got your hand up. Yes, Miss. Yeah, yes, Kevin.
I remember what I was gonna say, and the reason I didn't bring it up was because it had been a little bit, or the reason I forgot was because it had been a bit since I thought of it. When we talk about unexplained or like spooky stories, have you ever read the Reddit? It's like unexplained stories or unexplained mysteries or like creepy things that have happened to people. You ever gone down that rabbit hole there?
I have.
Some of them are like really like you read the story and you're like, oh.
At the end
like
of
it's not all mythological stuff, but like people who are like, yeah, like you always hear that story of like, oh, like the person who didn't take a ride from Ted Bundy or something.
Sure.
And you get those kind of stories where you're like, holy, if the fate that you escaped, or
coin toss, those coin toss moments, 50-50, could have done this, could have done that, went this way.
Or things that you just can't explain, and that we've all seen things that kind of defy our experiences. You don't know what you're looking at. And it's easy to kind of jump to a conclusion sometimes. Our old pal Joel and I once, we saw, Fuck, this is embarrassing. We were having some beers on my porch back in the day. You know, I like to have some drinks.
You?
Back in the day. And we saw what we thought was a plane on fire in the sky.
Okay.
And our friend convinced me to call the fire department to tell them that we're pretty sure we saw this thing that was like burning in the sky. It was on fire. It wasn't until maybe like 2 days later when I was like, oh my God, that was a Chinese lantern. And we thought it was like this plane or something burning, or we're like, oh my God, what is that? We had no idea. And it became this thing. Like, I was like looking on the news the next day. I'm like, is there a plane crash around here? Because that looked like, you know.
I mean, yeah, life's full of little mysteries. I ran
you see a
over,
bird fly over, and
probably what was just a piece of tire on the highway at night once, but I was convinced that I had hit like a drifter or something. I was like 19.
okay.
It's very unlikely that I actually had. I don't even think I was 17. But
Did you ever go back and look?
No.
Oh, well, this is like maybe there's somebody who's like, I was hit.
No. But I kind of
20 years ago.
I kind of knew that I hadn't. I was pretty sure that's what it was. But like, it's that kind of like, well, after post fact, your brain starts playing tricks on you, and you know, did you see it? You look back and I saw it kind of like rolling behind me. It was just a piece of tire tread, but it was like, oh, did I see a face on that or something? But
that would horrify me.
But what happened was, I told my dad about it the next day. I said, Dad, I hit something on the road, and I looked back and it looked like it was kind of rolling, like it reminded me of like a body or something. And he went all white because somebody had jumped off an overpass and been hit by a car that night. Now, I didn't hit like that person. It was nowhere near where I was.
Oh,
but just that like split second of, oh shit. Yeah.
I could just imagine Dave's face.
Yeah. But no, it was just a piece of tire tread that a truck had slouted off. But yeah, we all I didn't, just for the record, I did not at any point actually think I had hit a person. It just kind of weirded me out.
Wasn't there a scary movie that starts like this?
Yeah, I Know What You Did Last Summer.
I know you did last. Yeah. I know what you did when you were 17.
Yeah. Yes. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I can really go on. I always, for me, the world I live in, I live in the world there where mortgage payments and rent payments get made, if you know what I mean. Like, if you were able to actually sit down and look at all the factors that are involved, you'd figure out what's going on. There's, people get honestly mistaken or fooled by things all the time.
Yeah, for sure.
And if when we had Max and Lano on, he
was telling about the headlights.
The headlights.
It was a UFO,
but
it was a hill.
It was a hill. But if there was actually a famous, I think it was somewhere in Kentucky where there was this supposed, these ghost lights. You'd be able to go to this place and see these ghost lights, and they didn't seem to be connected to anything. They didn't seem to follow any distinguishable pattern. And people finally figured out it was just like a fucking highway that was 5 miles away, and you'd be able to see the lights from there. And they'd be following a road from far enough away that it would look spooky. It was just a highway. It's just a road far enough away.
You think somebody would have stood in front of it and saw their shadow at some point?
I think that's eventually what like a group of scientists finally went out and said, all right, because this is supposedly, this big paranormal thing that's going to go on. So let's go figure out what's going on. So they went out there, and sure enough, they figured out it was just the highway.
How would you like to be one of the guys who goes and investigates these things? Like, you're basically a real life Ghostbuster, but you're more of a Mythbuster.
Kind of. I don't think it's any I don't think there's a group. It's way more often that there is a group of people who are trying to prove this stuff, because you can sell books based on that, right?
Sure.
It's really hard to sell a book based on, ghosts aren't real.
This might be hard to pull off the top of your head.
Yes.
What do you think the most recent iteration of Mothman is? Like, what's
really funny you mentioned that, because that is exactly where I was heading.
Oh,
where I was trying
look
to
at us, man.
Yeah.
We're in the pocket today.
We're in simpatico here. What I was going to say, in the past, it used to take time for these legends to develop and spread. We live in the era of the internet, baby. Not only does this stuff get invented like on the spot, it spreads so fast. But something I never considered. You look at creepypasta, where that's what I would consider a lot of the modern
I know where you're going.
mythos to be. You look at creations like Slender Man, the Rake, Siren Head, Jeff the Killer.
Okay, back up for 1 sec.
Yeah.
What is Siren Head? Because my one nephew often used to talk about Siren Head.
Siren Head. Picture like a telephone pole sized creature that has like, arms and legs with just like alarm sirens for a head. What does it do? I don't know. It just looks creepy. A lot of good pictures of it like in the fog, far enough away that you can kind of make it out, and it's like, what the fuck is that?
Okay.
That's what a lot of this stuff is. But that stuff is almost crowdsourced. You could go onto 4chan and see that stuff being made up. The receipts are there. The Rake, which is a creature that, some people take very seriously, think is real. Go to look up, go to YouTube and look up Rake sightings, and you will find videos where people are passing this thing off as real. People who believe in this thing. That was a creature that was made up on the 4chan/B board on a thread called "Let's Make a New Monster."
What about a fistful?
A fistful. That should have been a tip-off, actually, now that I think about it. I was able to make a really easy joke about it. But
shit.
Like there's even content that gets reused. There's this creepy video that was made in like 2007 or something. Because in 2007 there was a big angels are real craze. Just for whatever reason, that was kind of, I don't know, I think it was 2007. It was around there. So someone made this fake video of this like creepy angel, finding this creepy creature. They said it was an angel. They found it in the forest, and it's just like a creepy video. I'll try and dig it up if I remember, but that's kind of...
I do like to try to add some notes.
Anyways, a few years later when, people were freaking out about the Rake, that video was just repurposed as a real sighting of a Rake. Now the new thing is skinwalkers. So that same video is making the rounds again because it's a skinwalker. So yeah.
That's the Rake, is this angel video? What is a Rake?
A Rake is like, it's like a creature like a man-sized creature that's all white that kind of walks on all fours. It's like a, yeah, it's a little disturbing.
That's like so wait, that's like you when you're drunk. Crawling on the floor.
No, it's bald.
All white. Oh, so it's like me.
It's like you when you're drunk.
Oh shit.
Slender Man is a uniquely Slender Man. We know who made Slender Man. The guy's got a copyright on it. It's a uniquely modern ghost. It's all of its, all the things it does. It interferes with any sort of electronic recording, or it creates a lot of static noise. It's that's something that people genuinely believe in and are scared of. I find that really interesting because I was a kid and I was scared of stuff, but I don't remember being genuinely afraid of stuff like Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street, because I knew that stuff was made up. The stuff that scared me was like aliens, which, yeah, sure, that was made up, but I didn't. I didn't know it at the time.
I mean, there's no way.
But
I'm not spending another season. No, you know what? I will, but not today. We'll talk about this later.
We'll talk about that later. But Bloody Mary scared me, but Candyman didn't.
Oh yeah, Bloody Mary scared the shit out of me. I would never want to, and somebody would always try to jump scare you.
Yeah.
Too. I remember you'd be like, what was it? You have to be in a bathroom.
Turn off the lights, and then when you're saying the last one, your buddy's. Ah!
Yeah. Even actually just thinking about that gave me like a slight shiver where I was like, oh yeah, I remember how much that scared me as a kid. Horrified me.
I remember going into a barn that we thought was haunted because it was kind of abandoned. It was probably just not safe to be in.
Yeah.
But being real scared about that as a kid.
We thought there was this house. It was like backed onto our schoolyard, and it was just in bad disrepair. But it was the haunted house, and I was sure it was a haunted house.
Yeah. I think it's
For
a really.
years.
I just want to put one little pin in my little discussion about kind of modern day mythologies. I think it's really fitting for the time that we live in that the making up of this stuff is right out there in the open, and it doesn't fucking matter.
Kind of like American politics.
Kind of like or Canadian politics these days.
All politics.
Yeah. It's just getting sad.
Like what I mean is like that QAnon stuff. Like it was clearly, I mean, I don't want to get into where I alienate anybody.
It was clearly a batshit insane conspiracy.
Well, I mean, I don't know. Seems pretty far out there, some of the stuff. I had one guy and I, because I work in the trades, right? There is all types.
I bet you know at least 2 sovereign citizens.
Probably. But I worked with this guy and I really liked working with him. Really nice guy, good mechanic, all this stuff. Fantastic. We got on well. And he was big into all that stuff. And he told me, he's like, oh, watch this video. Change your world. All right. I love conspiracy. I will entertain any conspiracy just for the sake of just knowing what everyone's thinking, right?
Sure.
And some of this shit, I was like, God, how could that be real? That's so far out there.
And the answer is it's not. But
I subscribe to the, like what you said at one time, summed it up perfectly. And I've always thought that's probably really what's going on is we're just a rudderless ship.
Yep. And we
just kind of roll.
People have a really hard time with that because we're facing some problems that would require some real leadership, and we just don't have it. It's not there. And so for some people, even the idea that even if we're under the control of an evil cabal, that's more comforting than the idea that there's nothing at all.
Yeah, that we're just making it up as we go.
Yeah. It's a scary thought. That's the real spooky part of Halloween.
There is comfort in conspiracy theories. And I've said it before, I've said it on the show. The other thing I have with people who are into conspiracies is it's never just one.
Yeah.
It's usually all the conspiracies.
It's all the conspiracies. And even take something like the JFK assassination. Whatever your feelings are on that. But people who do think that it's not, it didn't happen, will sometimes hold opinions that are mutually exclusive. At the same time, they'll think that it was the mafia or the CIA that assassinated him and that he's still alive. You can't believe those two things.
Yeah,
but
it's always so funny.
If you believe if you have that kind of conspiracy mindset, the thing you believe is that it's not the official story. So whatever it is that's not whatever is considered the official story, that's all more plausible than whatever that, it just becomes
now, in defense of conspiracy theorists, I don't want to say that we always get the full true story. I think there's a ton of conspiracies out there.
Well, first of all,
see them all the time.
We don't get the full true story because oftentimes a full true story just isn't even possible to tell, right? There's always unknowable details. People have things in their hearts and their minds that you can never know. But do wealthy people set out to enrich themselves more? Yes. Do they abuse the system to do that? Yes. Do they sometimes collude to do that? Yes. that pretty much explains the situation that we're in. That's not a conspiracy. That's just the reality, right?
Yeah.
You know, the conspiracy
I
is
love
that
a good conspiracy.
Yeah. All the terrible shit happens right out in the open. Right?
Yeah, that too, right?
That's it. You know, the whole thing about living in this era is that it's all, you know, the quiet part is out loud everywhere and nobody seems to give a shit.
True.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's actually the end of my notes, is the quiet part is being said very loudly in terms of horror stories, and people don't seem to care.
Yeah.
These days, much like our political climate.
Or just anything, you know. And I just want to go on record, if any of our listeners out there are conspiracy theorists, hey man, like I totally support, believe what you know, you're free to make your own decisions, your own beliefs. I support that. And I absolutely love to hear about them.
Yeah, please.
100%. I'd like to actually get somebody, and it would be hard because sometimes when you get into the discussions with somebody who's very staunchly against things, official stories, etc., it can be very hard to, I don't want to say be civil, but like when you present what might be a fact, and they're like, that's a schmacked. And you're like, no, dude, that's straight up fact. That's science.
Yeah.
But there's no, like, you know, sometimes people get committed to their own ideas. But I think it would be kind of fun to have a very debated or hotly debated conspiracy conversation.
I'd love a silly conspiracy. Like
the whole thing about Sweden not being real or whatever it was.
Finland,
yeah.
Yeah. That's a good one. That's fun. I'd love to debate someone who doesn't think Finland's real.
I got into it with a friend of mine, and I like this guy, and we always got on well and stuff, but he was very adamant about the moon landing not being real. And he said, oh, I'm sure we went there eventually. I just don't think the first one was. I think they wanted to beat the Soviets, and they faked it, and this and that. But you know, some of the stuff, I'm just like, I don't know, man. Like, the arguments were like, well, like, why wasn't there a delay and all this? And I'm like, I don't know, dude. It's radio waves. It's like light speed, basically.
Yeah. Would you be able to tell the 0.8 second delay that from here to the moon?
Yeah.
Like, what do you mean there wasn't a delay?
There's a delay between you and I. So for those of you listening, when we count in, we count back, or we count down from 10, and whoever leads it always has a delay in hearing the other person, whereas the other person who joins in is synchronized.
And when we put those on top of each other, you know, recording them separately, then our conversation syncs naturally. Yeah, they're even, you know, but that's a different kind of, you know, we're going through ISPs and stuff. They were talking like directly through a satellite.
But still, I mean, there's probably as much lag between the two of us as there would be between here and the moon.
Yeah.
At light speed, it's not that long.
There was a great video. This one I will like for sure dig up because this is an interesting. I love this stuff. But a guy who's you know, he's kind of like I don't know much about rocketry or whatever or the conspiracy, but what I do know a whole lot about is film, and faking the moon landing would have been impossible in the 60s. Like, from a film perspective.
I don't think they could really.
It would have been cheaper and easier to go to the moon than it would have been to fake it.
And that's the other thing. It's that hard to go to the moon.
It's not.
No.
It's not that hard. It's dangerous.
I do it in Kerbal Space Program all the time.
It's really dangerous, but like the idea of using it is hilarious to me that you know, people think, oh, there's no way we could use fuel to blast ourselves off this planet and hit something else. Like, they do that all the time now. All the time.
Yeah. And once you're in space, the amount of like your thrust to weight ratio is so different because there's no atmosphere. There's
Well, less
You know,
gravity.
there's gravity,
Yeah.
less gravity. So any amount of propulsion just goes. It's insane how much different it is in space versus here.
Like, where do you think ICBMs go?
Yeah.
They go to space, man. They go to space. Just, I that's my least favorite conspiracy because it's just maddening. It's absolutely maddening. So obviously it happened, and it's not that complicated. Splitting the atom was very complicated.
Yeah. Now we have bombs.
Flying a rocket to the moon was an engineering problem. You know, it just took time and effort.
Yeah. So let's take this to a close. I've got a closing fact for you.
Okay.
I'm gonna tie it in with our spooky times.
Oh.
I got a horror movie fact for you.
Ooh, love it.
Yeah. All right. Because the movie Halloween was on such a tight budget, they had to use the cheapest mask they could find for the character Michael Myers, which turned out to be,
I know this, yes,
a William Shatner Star Trek mask.
Oh, Billy Shatz.
Oh, Billy Shatz. Shatner initially didn't know the mask was in his likeness, but when he found out years later, he was honored. And I read that, and because I was going to look up some cool movie facts, and that was literally the first one. And I was like, what? No way. And then I was like, I went and I looked at the picture of him, and I was like, yeah, I could kind of see it. Kind of makes sense now. He just looks like Shatner long after he was Kirk. It's like Shatner from the first Star Trek movie.
Like a big old shat.
From the TV series. Like a big old shat.
Like a big old shat.
That's what I got. You got anything else? That's a closing fact, so shut her down now.
No.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Fact Smacks.
We hope you enjoyed our show. If you want to hear more, be sure to check us out on Patreon at patreon.com/factschmacks.
Or you can check us out on Facebook or on YouTube or on twitter.com @FactSchmackedPod.
We also have a website, factschmacks.xyz, because we know you haven't had enough yet.
Sure.